This is Gridiron Graduates, a weekly podcast covering all things football. Episode number 53, No Shave Radio, recorded November 16th, 2016.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's your boy Bill Rossetti hitting you guys back up on another edition of the Gridiron Graduates. Hope you all had a good week. Thanks for dropping by and coming back. As always, joined by my man Ian Wharton. What's going on, my man? How you doing?
Hey man, things are good here. Recovering totally over actually. Stomach flu from last weekend, which was very poorly timed as I was out and about. But things are good. I'm 100% back to eating real food again, which is always nice. So
nice.
Things are good, man.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just getting over being sick myself, so it's a good time. Man, it's crazy to think we're 10 weeks into the season already. You know, we're starting to hit the home stretch already. Just 7 weeks left. You know, teams are obviously jockeying for position. We're getting ready for the playoff run. It never ceases to amaze me how fast the NFL season just flies by. I mean, it feels like just yesterday we were gearing up for the preseason. Now we're getting ready for week 11 already.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. Like the middle of the year, you know, it takes no time at all to get here, and then next thing you know, we're gonna be staring the playoffs in the face, and a lot of folks' teams are going to be totally out of the race, and you know, they're going to be mourning their teams and unfortunately focusing on the draft. But you know, that's why we talk about it. You just kind of got to cherish every week, and even if your team's not doing too hot, because it's gone in a flash. So fall season definitely goes pretty quickly, and we're definitely experiencing that right now, man. Like you said, we're in the home stretch for games, and there's really no more pressure than there will be now until the playoff season for a lot of these teams to step up and win a game.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll kind of jump into the playoff picture a little bit later on in the show, but obviously some big things, a couple bits of news that happened we'll touch on first. First thing we'll talk about is the suspension of Alshon Jeffrey. Got busted for performance-enhancing drugs. He's suspended 4 games as the downward spiral of the Chicago Bears continue for the season. It's just been seemingly one thing after another. Just a mess of a season for them. They lose Alshon Jeffrey to suspension. They've also lost Kyle Long to injury for the rest of the season. You know, not that offense had really produced much of anything, especially with Jay Cutler. You know, it's unfortunately Cutler hadn't really shown much lately, and now he's got to work with a subpar receiver core at least for the next 4 weeks, and for the rest of the season he'll now be without his best offensive lineman. So things kind of went from bad to worse there in Chicago, but at least they have the Cubs World Series title to kind of hang their hats on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough break for them. They've invested a lot into that roster in recent years, and especially, you know, mixing in veterans and some really good free agency signings. Like, I think they've had good off seasons in general, but it just shows you where that roster was when this regime took over. And you know, they're under a lot of pressure now entering this off season. They've got to figure out what to do at quarterback. I don't think bringing Jay Cutler back is a smart decision, just considering the money and where the roster is. Like, the only way you bring him back, I think, is if you take a quarterback high in the draft and you just decide, okay, we're gonna redshirt this quarterback as long as possible this season, until something goes wrong and really we're forced to do something else. So it's gonna be hard to upgrade him though too. And so it just depends. It depends on their ownership. Is their ownership going to be patient enough to say, okay, John Fox, are we going to give you the time that you need to develop a young quarterback? Or are we going to be like the Titans and fire you 8 weeks into the season if, 2017 doesn't start out how we want it to start out, even if you're starting a rookie quarterback. So that's a tough position to be in. Historically, they're going to give a team with a young quarterback a little bit more slack, but every ownership group is different. And we've seen in recent years, Lovie Smith, he also was fired. So Dirk Cutter took over in Tampa Bay. So that type of patience I don't think exists across the league very often anymore. And so it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I feel bad for Jay Cutler. He's a subpar quarterback. I don't think he's anything better than that. He's maybe average, but I think he could catch on elsewhere and still be a starting quarterback in the NFL. It's just that's the situation of the quarterback position in the NFL. But clearly, I think right now with the Bears, he's just kind of reached the end of the line. Unless if they're going to give him one more chance to lead a veteran roster.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple times the people like to point to the Jets as a potential landing spot for Cutler in 2017, which would probably not be the best of landing spots, but I mean it'd be an interesting match to say the least. Him playing for Todd Bowles there and Chan Gailey.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would make sense in terms of the need. The Jets are clearly one of the teams with a need at quarterback. And I think Cutler would be a sizable upgrade, actually. As much as I don't think Cutler is good, we know Fitzpatrick's not good. So, that's one of several teams across the league. I think he'd be an upgrade. Just kind of going through some depth charts across the NFL. Obviously, I think the Jets, the Browns, the Texans would be another one. The Jaguars, the Broncos. Although the Broncos have Paxton Lynch, and I'm sure they're going to want to push him. And Simeon's kind of like Cutler. I mean, both those guys are limited. It's kind of funny though, the Broncos, seeing as they had him. And then you can maybe argue San Francisco. And that's probably it. And so guys like Tony Romo, if he comes available, and also for Cutler, maybe even Arizona with Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer's been terrible this year for the most part. So, considering that, those are teams that might take a look at him and just offer him a starting job right away. And, that's an interesting decision for some of those teams. Obviously, I don't think San Francisco is going to be interested at all, just because they're such a young team. They need to get a rookie out there playing right away, I think, and start getting that experience and building up that roster for Chip Kelly. So, but man, it's going to be tough out there. There's going to be some veteran quarterbacks with big names that have really bad stigmas against them and limited playoff success and experience on their resume, but so goes the life of an NFL quarterback. If you can play the position fairly decently, you're going to get a lot of opportunities to start across this league. And Cutler's one of those guys. Again, people feel very strongly about him, I think, on both sides, but especially more on the negative side. But to me, I kind of fall in the middle on him. I say he's not especially good, but he is someone that he can upgrade a roster. But I think Chicago, it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough for them to keep him at that salary.
Yeah, I agree. You're probably looking at the last few weeks here for Cutler in Chicago. The other bit of news we need to touch on, we've talked in the past, of course, about the Dak Prescott, Tony Romo kind of quarterback debate. Well, it got settled this week, it's at least for now. Tony Romo will be active, but he will be the backup. Dak Prescott will keep his job as a starter as the Cowboys take on the Ravens this week. I'm sure it was a tough decision for sure, especially for Jerry Jones and that big contract putting Romo on the bench. But even Romo said himself that Dak's earned the right to be the quarterback. Now, whether he truly means that or if that's just player speak, we don't know. But at 8-1,
it's hard to make those changes when you're winning. And we saw it last year actually with the Jets. Fitzpatrick wasn't playing especially great. I know people will point to the stats, but he still wasn't playing great. I think that, and it's proved that his weapons were doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And this year, with Brandon Marshall not quite doing as well, it's not a surprise that Fitzpatrick's not doing as well. But and that's not to say that Dak is Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's not. He's much better already. I think that's pretty clear. I don't think that's a statement that's going to draw much ire from anybody because Dak has played very well. But I've been on record saying that I think Romo should play, but I understand this decision. I don't think this is a dumb decision. You've got a guy who's playing great football right now. Why would you change that? So I'm cool with that. I'm totally cool with that. I think that he's seeing the game well right now. Obviously, with Ezekiel Elliott with a dominant performance again. Elliott needs 137 yards per game on average the rest of the season to get to 2,000 rushing yards as a rookie. So he has a chance to get there. This offensive line is playing fantastic ball. Jason Garrett's making the game easy for Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott's taking full advantage, which is very impressive. So he's understanding defensive concepts, understanding the route schemes as far as where he needs to be looking, how to look off the safeties. He's been doing well in that regard. So it's the nuances that he's playing as if he's a veteran. And so I can't fully disagree with that decision. It's a great thing for the Cowboys, but it's going to leave them in a hairy situation, I think, this offseason with Tony Romo. As much as Tony Romo is a veteran's veteran and a great man, and definitely a leader, I think someone with a $24 million cap hit next season, just inevitably you're going to have to do something with that, whether that's trade him, cut him. You can cut him, designate him as a June 1st cut, get him out of there and save that salary. Someone's going to have an opportunity to get someone that was once a great quarterback, even if he is fragile.
Yeah, no, well said. And no, you're right. Even if he comes back, sometime this year, you're not going to stick a quarterback with a $24 million cap hit on the bench for 2017. So it'll be quite interesting to see what they do this offseason. It'll be a storyline to watch. Now, of course, it's all about can the Cowboys hang on to that top seed and get home field advantage and potentially make a run to the Super Bowl. Because certainly Seattle's right on their tails. But I think it's pretty safe to say that it could very well be those two teams playing for the NFC title in about 2+ months.
Yeah. I mean, and how with Seattle looked this past week against New England, I think those are the two teams that you're looking at, Seattle and Dallas, and saying, okay, these might be the two teams that it comes down to. And obviously the NFL always throws us for loops. And so once we get to the playoffs, some crazy stuff always happens. But to me right now, those are the two best NFC teams in the league.
Mm-hmm. So let's kind of look at the playoff picture, and we'll go ahead and start in the NFC since we're talking about the Cowboys and Seahawks. NFC East right now, obviously the Cowboys have a pretty comfortable lead. They're 2 games up on the Giants at 8-1, the Giants at 6-3. Redskins at 5-3-1. The Eagles sitting at 5-4. So every team in the division has a winning record, which is nice. What's killing the Eagles is they're 0-3 in the division, so that's going to hurt when it comes to tiebreakers. But obviously, as we said, Dallas right now is the class of the East. But there's certainly a possibility here that this division could send 3 teams to the playoffs. Right now, the Giants and the Redskins would both be in. And the Eagles obviously are right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to be doing elimination, I think. We did this earlier in the season. We eliminated the Browns, 49ers from playoff contention. Obviously, now we've got a lot more to work off of past the midpoint of the season. I don't think you can eliminate any of these teams from the playoffs. I think you're right. You got 3 teams out of this division that could realistically, potentially, make the playoffs. So I think this is going to be a fight down to the end of the season. And the only thing I'm worried about is I'm looking at the Eagles and I'm saying, you guys are 1-4 on the road. Now you're 4-0 at home, which that's fantastic. And you have the second biggest point differential in the division this season. They've got 66 points as their point differential, right behind the Cowboys, who have 88. Giants actually have a negative point differential, and the Redskins only have a 3-point differential. So that tells me Philadelphia is a better team than those 2 teams. But they're losing on the road, and you've got to win more games on the road if you're going to have a chance to win the wild card. So, but they're only, I think, a game back. Yeah, it looks like there's a game back of the Giants here for that wild card. So they're definitely in the mix. But the Giants have also won 4 straight, so they got a bit of an uphill climb, but they're going to have the opportunity to get back in this pretty quickly.
And I've mentioned this before, and the nice thing for the Eagles, the way their schedule plays out, is that 3 of their last 4 are all their home division games. So, especially now with them being right in the mix with the Giants and the Redskins, there's going to be plenty of playoff implications in those last few weeks. That's huge for them.
Yep.
NFC North right now, very tight. Lions and Vikings tied at 5-4. As the Lions have caught up to the Vikings, who have been in a complete free fall ever since the byes. Obviously, of course, started 5-0, had their bye, have not won since. And it's the Lions' head-to-head victory over the Vikings that gives them the division lead right now. And then you've got the struggling Packers at 4-5. It's not every day you see the Packers sitting at under 500, especially this late in the season. And then the Bears at 2-7, and we've already discussed the Bears. I think it's safe to cross them off the list. But it's certainly still a 3-horse race. Green Bay has a head-to-head win over Detroit, but the Vikings have a head-to-head over the Packers. So again, this could be another division that comes right down to the wire, and obviously all these teams very much in play for the wild card as well if they don't win the North.
Yeah, it's definitely looking like it, and I agree with you. The Bears are done. They're toast. They're playing for a top 5 pick. Vikings and Packers. Vikings are on a 4-game losing streak. Packers are on a 3-game losing streak. So the Lions are definitely the only team trending upward. If you look at the point differential, the Vikings have the highest one, but you can't trust them. They went up to 5-1. Now they're sitting 5-4, half game back from the Lions, and so they're going to have the opportunity to turn this thing around. Numbers are very similar for those 2 teams as far as home and road record. They're actually the same, both 3-1 at home, 2-3 on the road. So that may come down to their head-to-head matchup. If the Vikings win that second matchup, then it's just a matter of who gets more wins, and so they've got the opportunity to do this. I'm gonna predict that the Vikings win the division, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Packers come out of it or if the Lions come out of it. I actually wouldn't mind seeing the Lions, just because it's a little bit different to see them, and if they could win that division, I'd be pretty happy for Detroit fans.
Oh yeah, no doubt. It's obviously been a long time since the Lions won the division, but are they going to be able to hang on here for the last 7 weeks, or can Minnesota turn things around quick enough and retake control of the division? NFC South, pretty close race. Falcons at 6-4, but only 1 ahead in the loss column on Tampa Bay and New Orleans, who both sit at 4-5. And even the Panthers, not too far out of it, but still sitting at 3-6. So I don't think we'll completely write off Carolina yet. But obviously they've got to turn things around quickly, especially since they've already lost once to the Falcons. And like I said, Buccaneers and Saints right there. Falcons, of course, have their bye this week. Saints and Panthers actually play this week on Thursday night. So that's a pretty important game.
Yeah, for sure. And you talked about Carolina. They are on the brink of elimination. And I think that we may know the answer to that here this week. If they lose Thursday night football against the New Orleans Saints. Now, it's at home against the Saints, but they cannot afford to lose this game, simply put. They win this game, they're right in the mix for the wild card. I don't think they have a chance in that division. I do think the Falcons will run away with this towards the end of the season. They easily have the bigger point differential in the division. They actually have one of the highest points scored in the NFL. And actually, a quick glance, they have the most points in the NFL with 320. No other team has over 292 points. And so they've scored 30 more points than any other team, actually 28 to be exact. I think the Falcons easily win this division, although they have given up a lot of points. They've given up 283 points, so that defense is definitely vulnerable. But I think the Panthers, this is a must-win game this week. They lose, they're done. If they win, they're just keeping afloat in the wild card. I don't think that they're keeping afloat in the chase for the division. So Buccaneers and Saints a little bit disappointed, especially with the Buccaneers. They've kind of been up and down. They're 1-4 at home. 1-4. That's very odd to see from a young team. So I'm going to call this division for the Falcons, and it'll be interesting to see if they can go ahead and close it out.
And they especially have some easy games coming up. I mean, the Cardinals certainly aren't an easy team.
Right.
That's who the Falcons have coming out of their bye. Then they host Kansas City, which certainly will be a tough one. But then they're at LA and then home against San Francisco. So those are definitely two winnable games. And then they close at Carolina and home against the Saints. So yeah, the Falcons handle their business. They should take this division. I know over in the West, we obviously already talked about how dominant the Seahawks have been so far. They lead at 6-2-1. They've got a 2-game lead on the Cardinals at 4-4-1. Rams at 4-5, and then obviously the Niners just trudging along, eyeing that second overall pick at 1-8 right now.
Yeah, I'm going to call this for both the Rams and the 49ers. I'm going to keep the Cardinals alive here. Honestly, I'm not sure why. We know they're great high-end talent, but Tyrann Mathieu hasn't been the guy that we've known in the past. He's still coming back, trying to get 100% after his major injury last year. Carson Palmer looks done. He just looks like stick a fork in him. Unfortunately, just Father Time caught up to him very quickly, and he has just not been playing well. Their offensive line hasn't played very well. Schematically, Bruce Arians, I think you've got to change up what you're doing with Carson Palmer. I don't think this is a deep passing attack team anymore, which is just shocking to say. But that's what happens. Sometimes your personnel, things change with them, and you've got to adjust. And at 4-4-1, this team reasonably needs to possibly win out to get to the playoffs. So they're on the brink as well. With their matchup, like you said, they're going to be playing the Vikings. So that's a really tough matchup. And if they don't win this one, probably going to end up thinking that their season's over as well. But Seahawks, I think, easily win this division.
Yeah, definitely a big one this week. Cardinals and Vikings. Loser's going to be in a tough spot with just with 6 to play. Looking over at the AFC, Patriots, of course, lead the East at 7-2. But your Dolphins, man, they're making quite the run.
Yep.
Built their way back up to 5-4. Bills at 4-5. Jets at 3-7. And with the way the quarterback play has gone so far for the Jets, I think we can knock them out. Bills have been struggling as of late, and the fact that the two wild cards in the AFC both already have 7 wins means Buffalo has a lot of work to do if they want to get into the playoffs, and I don't think they're going to have what it takes to get that work done. So I think we could probably cross them out as well.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I'm going to cross out the Bills and Jets from this divisional race. The Bills are 3 games back from the wild card race. They don't have enough games to make that up. Quite simply, they're chasing too many teams. Dolphins already beat them once. I think the Dolphins could beat them again. The Patriots obviously going to win the division, but the Dolphins turned things around, man. Literally a month ago, this team was 1-4, and they looked like they were on their deathbed. They looked like it was a team that needed to tank and rebuild from the draft, and I said that, and I was wrong. This coaching staff has improved. Most of it has to do with the health of the team. The health of the team has made a massive difference, which that's not shocking. They've got their offensive line 100%. Now this week they won't actually have 100%. Laramie Tunsil be back at left tackle. Brandon Elbert is hurt against the Rams, but I don't think that's going to matter. I think they're going to win and extend their winning streak to 5 games. But this could be a Houston Texans of 2015 scenario where they start out poorly, hit the switch, guys get healthy, defense has gotten healthy. Cam Wake has been a monster. Mario Williams has been playing better. Kiko Alonso played much better last week. Byron Maxwell is also playing effectively. So their stars are showing up on defense. So that's obviously a huge plus. So it was a star-built team with little depth, and that's kind of where they're at right now. But I think the Dolphins have a chance. Obviously, they're a game and a half back in the wild card, so they're still in the mix, though. But I think the Patriots easily make the playoffs, obviously. Dolphins are going to be in the mix. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out the Bills and Jets as well.
It certainly helps that they've got the Rams and the 49ers in the next 2 weeks. So
For sure.
Handle business there.
Should be 2 easy wins.
Yeah, it should put them at 7 wins. And, obviously the AFC West teams are going to beat each other up, so could potentially open the door if the Dolphins could steal one of those other games. Because then they got Baltimore, Arizona, and then 3 division games to close the season. So, yeah, like you said, the way they've turned things around over the last month has really been impressive. And to think if the Dolphins were in the AFC North, they'd be in first place, or at least tied for first place, because as amazing as it is to say, the AFC North is not that strong this year. The Ravens lead at just 5-4. Steelers are 4-5. Bengals 3-5-1, and then
Yeah, it's an ugly division, and I'm not shocked that the Ravens are. I should say I'm shocked that the Ravens are in first, but I'm not shocked that they're not that good. So they actually have one of the lowest points for in the NFL, only 182 points for. They also have one of the best defenses in the NFL, which that's not shocking. I thought maybe the injuries and the reliance on injuries, guys with injuries coming off injuries would really cost them, but it hasn't to this point. They've only given up 160 points this season. That is actually good enough for third in the NFL behind just the Vikings and the Seahawks, and they're tied with the Cardinals for third there, and also the Eagles actually for fourth. So there's like a 3-way tie there. So very impressive defense from them. I'm not buying them. I think that they probably are going to battle with the Steelers for the end of the season. I think the Steelers end up winning the division if Big Ben can stay healthy. I'm not going to cancel out the Bengals here yet, just because, although I am definitely selling all of their stocks. Obviously, the Browns we've already written off, but the Bengals are close. The Bengals are really close to being written off. They lose another game here in the next 2 weeks, and I'm ready to write them off.
Yeah, really, the only reason we're not throwing the Bengals out yet is because of how close they are in the division, surprisingly. Only one back in the loss column. And they still have both games left with the Bengals, including the first meeting in 2 weeks. So, Bengals not out of it yet, but yeah, they've definitely got to start winning some games, and that starts this week against Buffalo, and then obviously got to be able to beat Baltimore as well. Plus they have one more meeting with the Steelers, so they have opportunities, but obviously got to take advantage of them. AFC South, Texans 6-3, Titans not a bad season for them right now at 5-5. Nice little bounce back from having the worst record last year. Colts at 4-5, so they're kind of hovering, and then the poor Jaguars. We thought this would be the year they'd at least contend for a playoff spot. Obviously, they're nowhere near a playoff spot. They're looking at yet another top 5 pick, and very well could be looking at a new head coach after this season. So I think we could scratch them out. I mean, they're like the AFC North. These teams are closer to the division lead than they are the wild card. At this point, the Jags are already 5 games out, or 4.5, 5 games out of a wild card spot, and 4 games behind the Texans. And of course, they just lost to the Texans. So I think, as painful it is for some people to hear, because they were so hyped on them this year, so hyped up. Jags are done.
Yeah, they're definitely done. I think that staff is done. The GM should be done as well. I don't know if Caldwell will be, but he shouldn't come back next year. They've had a tough challenge, but missing on Bortles, to this point, missing on the coaching staff, it doesn't make it easy to keep your job. And I think it's fair to kind of start anew, let someone else kind of build with what they've kind of built up already. There are some positives to that roster, but they need a lot more. And the Jaguars are done. Colts are done, in my opinion. I know they're only 2 games back, so I may end up eating that one. But I just don't think that is a playoff caliber team. I'm looking at the Titans and the Texans. The Titans are just playing better football than the Colts are right now. I like what they've been doing. They've been incorporating more Oregon concepts into their playbook, and it's been very helpful for Marcus Mariota over the last month and a half. The running game is working well. The defense is still kind of struggling a little bit. Schematically, they can't do much to cover those corners. The corners are just bad outside of Jason McCourty. Paris Cox is awful. Bryce McCain is struggling. The safety play has not been good. Denora Cersei, a guy who I actually liked out of Buffalo, has not been a good free agent signing for them. He's been all over the place. The Texans, though, I can't fully trust the Texans. They're 5-0 at home, which is good. They have only scored 161 points this season. Okay, so for comparison's sake, that's only behind the Los Angeles Rams and the Chicago Bears. And yet somehow this team is in first place in this division. So they've actually scored 13 points less than the Jaguars and 103 points less than the Titans. Now their defense is stingy. They've only allowed 188 points. So that's a very good defense. It's actually less points than the Broncos have allowed all season. So for comparison's sake, it's very good defense. But it's going to be hard to win games with a quarterback throwing for 99 yards a game every week. So they've got to get that figured out. Brock Osweiler has to play better. Bill O'Brien has to do a better job as well. So the Colts, I'm not going to fully cross them out in ink. I'm going to cross them out with pencil so that I can wait and see another week or two, kind of see if the Texans stumble or if the Titans, both they and the Titans stumble. Because if they do, then the Colts have that opportunity. 2 games back isn't the end of the world, but it is going to be tough. So I'm going to go ahead. I think the Titans win this division just like I thought at the beginning of the year. But don't rule out the Titans. The Titans are a good team.
And those two meet in Indy this week. So Colts, And a couple key games coming up for the Colts. 3 of their next 4 are at home. Tennessee this week, Pittsburgh on Thanksgiving, and then they host the Texans. So win those games, and they're in good shape. But if they lose a few, well, could start to spell the end for Chuck Pagano as well. You very well be seeing 2 new head coaching staffs in the AFC South for 2017 if things play out in a certain way. And then the AFC West, the best division in football, clearly, as you have 3 teams with 7 wins: Chiefs at 7-2, Raiders 7-2, Broncos 7-3. So all of them, of course, very comfortably in the playoffs right now, whereas the Chargers are not. And the way they've been playing up and down, and just the gap they've already had, or the gap they already are facing in this division, they're pretty close. I think we'll do like what you said with the Colts, put them in pencil, not completely write them off, but it's getting pretty close for the Chargers.
I'm willing to go further. I am willing to put it in marker that they are done.
There you go.
It's just injuries, man. It's injuries. It's too many injuries. They are the most injured team in the NFL this year. I've never really seen a franchise get devastated like this year in and year out, like the Chargers have, and it's terrible.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's just awful, man. And then after Phillip Rivers' amazing 4-interception fourth quarter against Miami, I'm ready to write them off. And it's a shame. I like this team. I like their players. I like a lot about them, but they're just not quite good enough. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to personally say that they are done. And it's just partially because their division is just so good, like you mentioned. You got 7-2 Chiefs, 7-2 Raiders, 7-3 Broncos, as you mentioned. Those are just going to be hard teams to stop. And really, you can't give them a 3-game lead. So I don't think that they're gonna back up, and those 3 teams, I don't think they're gonna lose that type of advantage that they've already built up. So I'm gonna call that division as far as the Chargers are out. Now, as far as who wins the division, I honestly have no idea. I don't know. Each of these teams is really good. Yeah. So it's gonna come down to luck as far as who they're gonna face and if anyone's injured. And it's going to just come down to timely football. And the Chiefs have been playing great football. They're won 5 in a row. Raiders have won 3 in a row. Broncos had a bounce-back win last week. And so if I had to lean anyways, I'd probably say the Chiefs just because I believe in their quarterback more than the Broncos. But I also think their defense is better than the Raiders. So I do think that 3 teams do get in the playoffs from that division, though. I think that they end up getting both wild cards, which would be pretty darn impressive.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just looking at the wild card standings real quick as we were talking about the Chargers. It's not just having to catch up to those 3 teams, but they've also got 5 other teams in between that they've got to jump over. Yeah. They've got to pass Buffalo, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, and Miami just to put themselves behind Denver, at least the way it stands right now. So
yeah, and they're behind technically on the tiebreaker to Miami because they lost the
head-to-head to Miami. They've already played 5 division games and they're only 2-3, so that's gonna hurt. Obviously they've already lost to the Chiefs. They lost to the Raiders and they split with the Broncos. So tiebreakers not working in their favor. They lost head-to-head to the Colts, so that's going to hurt them. So they're in pretty rough shape right now, to say the least. So yeah, I might have to agree with you. Actually, I might have to go ahead and knock them out as well. So that's our take on the NFL, and who he thinks in. So not too many teams completely out of it. So still a lot of teams still in play, and obviously a lot of time. But things are certainly gonna jumble up as we get closer. But I guess with that, I think we might as well go quick to talk about the college playoffs. New rankings came out. Surprise, surprise, Alabama's number 1. Ohio State, after what was a crazy weekend in which numbers 2, 3, and 4 all lost, Ohio State moves up to number 2. Michigan actually stays at 3, and Clemson is in at 4, just ahead of number 5 Louisville. Washington fell to 6, Wisconsin's at 7, Penn State is number 8, and I found an article that projected the Bulls using the current rankings. Right now, Penn State would actually play in the Orange Bowl against Louisville, so Penn State's now in a good position to play in the New Year's Six Bowl. Oklahoma at 9, and then Colorado in at number 10. And the other thing I noticed is that they actually moved Boise State ahead of Western Michigan for that group of 5 spots, which I found pretty interesting, even though Western Michigan is still undefeated at 10-0. But, obviously it just shows that this is very fluid and things are going to change. But, so, I don't know, what do you think, man, after what was a crazy weekend and looking at the top 4 now and who's on the outside? What are we thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it is just a crazy week in college football, but, I mean, my main takeaway is how will the committee handle it if Ohio State wins out? Because then it'd be, like you said, it's Penn State in the Big Ten title game, not Ohio State. And then if Penn State wins that game against Wisconsin, do you have 2 Big Ten teams in? That's the fascinating question for me. Will you have Penn State jump over Washington, over Louisville to get in? Because if you do, I mean, that's perfectly fair. I understand. However, having a 2-loss team jump 1-loss teams, I think Ohio State would surely have to be in. So, just because, I mean, they went out, they have the strongest resume in the country, even with that loss. So I don't know, man. I personally want to see, and this is nothing against Penn State at all, I just want to see Lamar Jackson in the college football final playoff series. So maybe what we need is that we need Clemson to lose too, so that way, because if Penn State wins the Big Ten, any other year I think that they would deserve to get in. But now what they could also pull is say, well, Michigan beat Penn State. So if Ohio State beats Michigan and Michigan beats Penn State, but Penn State beat Ohio State, I mean, that's a heck of a problem to have. Now, usually this stuff gets figured out in the end, and things don't go according to plan. So either maybe Michigan State beats both Ohio State and Penn State, and then it's not even a discussion. Or, Penn State goes and plays Wisconsin in the title game, and Wisconsin pulls it out. I don't know. Football has a way of figuring it out, but it's a fascinating scenario, man. This is why we love college football right here, because we have no idea what's going to happen, and I love it. So I would be disappointed though if Penn State is not necessarily cheated out. I mean, it's hard. I mean, 2-loss team, it's going to be tough to fit them into a final. But if they do win the Big Ten, it would be almost a shame that they don't get in. But it is what it is. If they only had 1 loss, they'd be in for sure. And it's just going to be a coin flip. I think it's really up to Clemson to not choke. And they did last week a little bit. I mean, I was watching that game here before we recorded, and they had plenty of opportunities to win that game and stop Pittsburgh, and they just couldn't stop Pitt from advancing the ball just throughout the game. I mean, they really had no chance. As well as the offense played, and as well as Deshaun Watson finally played, they just didn't have a chance on defense. They didn't. That's not the type of defense we had come to expect from them.
It is just pretty amazing that we're actually sitting here talking about the legit possibility of Penn State actually being in the college football playoff, something that was unheard of as little as like 3 weeks ago.
Right.
But here we are. But yeah, I think certainly what could be weighing Penn State down is the fact that one of the, you mentioned the 2 losses, and you go even further, one of those losses is to a team that's not even in the top 25. Now, yeah, that's a Pitt team that just beat Clemson, but unfortunately, Pitt is still not ranked in the top 25. Therefore, it's hard to count that as a quote-unquote good loss.
Right.
If they were in the ranks, it would obviously be better, but because they're not, that could hurt Penn State a little bit. But obviously it's going to knock Clemson down a bit, which it did, but I think the committee got it right putting them ahead of Louisville because of head-to-head, and we know that the committee clearly values head-to-head a lot. So, but like you said, things are going to play themselves out. Obviously Ohio State and Michigan still have a game to play against each other, so someone's going to get bumped there. Washington still has to play Washington State. Even the group of 5 spots are going to play themselves out. Will Western Michigan be able to run the table? Boise State still needs help just to get to the Mountain West title game. So a lot of factors in play, but like you said, this is why we love it, and we're anxious to watch it all play out and see what scenarios develop. And so I think with that, I guess we'll think that's a good place to kind of wrap things up here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in the college football world. Obviously, NFL, it's same story as usual. Really, we don't see the NFL slow down until the last 2-3 games of the season, and sometimes that's when the most drama unfolds. Not necessarily for every team in the league, as most of the teams in the league are eliminated, but we're heading to a very fun end of the season, I think, and I hope it is drama filled up through week 17. So it's been a really good football season so far. I think the NFL has been very strong the last 3 weeks, and I'm hoping that it can continue to be that way as far as the product and the quality of product, which gets talked about a lot. So, but yeah, man, I agree with you here. I think we've covered everything pretty well. Next week, not sure if we're going to be recording. I know that your schedule is going to be pretty tough next week, and so just want to throw a heads up to the listeners out there. Thank you guys for your patience as we're trying to work around some schedules throughout the season. Also, if you're a fan of the Miami Pod, we're trying to record directly after games. Myself and Oscar, his schedule's been crazy. So if you're a fan of the Miami Pod, that's kind of what's going on with that. So throughout the week, it's been tough for us to record, specifically because of his schedule. So that's not a problem, though. We're here to talk football all the time on Twitter. Make sure you guys give us maybe not a follow. If you don't want to follow us, that's fine. But at least follow the page that we've got up. We've got a Facebook page. Like the page. Follow the Twitter page. And give Bill a follow for sure. I don't necessarily need more followers, but give Bill some more followers. He needs it. He's doing quite well for himself, don't get me wrong, but that man needs more followers. It's a good Twitter account, especially for the college football season, especially. I know I learned a lot from it, so I don't really watch college football or college basketball, so make sure you guys give him a follow. Thanks again for listening.
That's right. Shout out to college basketball getting underway, and number 1 already going down. Not even a week into the season.
Oh man, I literally don't pay any attention to it. Who's number 1, or who was number 1? I should say. Duke already lost. That's
Duke
crazy.
Lost to Kansas. So by the time if we record next week, you'll be looking at Kentucky at number 1. But yeah, so. Not even a week into the season, and we've already seen number 1 lose. But when it's against Kansas, can't knock it too much, obviously, especially on the neutral court. But yeah, and appreciate that shout out, Ian. And like I said, always enjoy chatting with you guys. Yeah, the joys of working retail.
It's that crazy time of year.
It really is. I'll be working late at night next Wednesday. I'll be working pretty late Thanksgiving night, actually, and then I'll obviously be there Black Friday as well. So we'll see. But if we're not able to record, we want to wish you guys a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy dinner with your family, and of course, enjoy the games. Got some pretty good games as usual on Thanksgiving. I know the Steelers are playing the Colts. You've got Minnesota at Detroit, and you've got Washington at Dallas on Thanksgiving. So you got 3 solid games there. But again, so yeah, happy Thanksgiving. If you go shopping on Black Friday, enjoy, be careful. And with that, I think we'll wrap things up. So again, thanks as always for listening. Really do appreciate it. And until next time, guys, take care. We'll see you next time right here on GG.